In this podcast, we'll be looking at the facial recognition technology and the barriers to successful adoption, deployment, and execution. Talking about today facial recognition in this podcast, and it's something we've been tracking at ECR for over 10 years, and we've had numerous, is it legal, is it within GDPR, is it possible, does the technology work, is it accurate enough, and all these sorts of questions have been answered. And we've then had case studies around, Rite Aid have been very generous. Bob Oberosa was shared his program, 100, 200 stores, and then sadly that then collapsed under the weight of a sort of Reuters article that was sort of not particularly favourable about the use of technology, where the technology came from, where they put the particular facial recognition cameras. And then, we've been gradually sort of, it went quiet, then we've been gradually picking up that this is now hot news. And so we've now increased the cadency of when we talk about this from sort of maybe once a year to about 3 times a year. And we had a meeting just recently in June. So it seems to be really picking up. And every time we hear retailers, and we've had them from Australia, New Zealand, we've from Europe, we've had them from America, Canada, and UK. The ones that have used it, either proactively, someone walks into the store, do something with that information, or retrospectively on investing, they all report really positively on it, either productivity or shrink savings. One retailer sort of reported a 25% shrink saving. I mean, these are big numbers. This is this is what we say, this is the single most important intervention in loss prevention for decades, if not forever. So it's a really big deal. But I think, like with all things in retail, it does come down to detail. Retail is detail, and how facial recognition is executed, and how you win, if you like, the sort of hearts and minds of the public, to get behind it. And before all that, of course, the board of directors. So it's this execution piece that keeps on coming up. And I know you've been following this probably as long as I have, Emmeline. And what are some of the points you've picked up in terms of execution and how you do facial recognition, if you like?
Yeah, so I mean, you and I have now sat through so many use cases and case studies of how this is being deployed internationally. And what's interesting about that as well is that there's different legislative frameworks for its operation. And so sometimes retailers are forced to deploy it in slightly different ways. But absolutely agree. Overall, the case is compelling in terms of the impact on shrink, the impact on theft, reassurance for staff and customers, greater collaboration with the police, who also are utilising the systems. It just seems to have so many benefits. There are, however, I think still some sticking points. Now, facial recognition, I think to begin with, was almost just seen as, how could there be much variance? You plug in this system, it monitors a face. Is it accurate? Yes, it is. Okay, there we go. We've got a match. But actually, there is so much variance, and this is where it's getting quite interesting. So I guess, first of all, it's around the watch list. So what is the database of known or suspected individuals, and who owns and manages that database? Is it the vendor? And we've got examples of that where they're the data controller. Is it that then the database is shared amongst different retailers that are all using the same system? So an offender who may not have ever targeted your store before, but has targeted someone else's, is going to ping on your system. Or we've seen some cases that have been, such as in New Zealand, that the Privacy Commissioner has said, actually, no, you can only have a store-based database. So even if your offender has been accessing or stealing from your same store, your same brand up the road, they're not going to ping on your other store. It's a store only database. A huge variation with that, and implications, I think, for how effective the system would be, particularly with traveling offenders, so organized criminals who might take advantage of that geographic dispersal of the systems. The other thing here, though, that's really key, and again, I'm surprised by just how much variance there is the notification. So who gets the ping when there's a match? Is it internally a staff member or a security guard? or is it managed externally by a remote LP or security operating centre, and they then have to dial into the store to say, somebody's just walked through, and obviously then there's a time delay to that. What was your thought on this sort of database and notifications point?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting point, as you say. A shared data. I think we've heard from one country, they can only have a database in one store. And so it's just you come back to that store, and then the greater concern was when you have a shared database, someone can be banned from every single store in the UK, or whatever different market would be. And then you have well, okay, go buy the shopping, So I can see all the all the issues. I don't have a great answer. I can just see all the issues. I mean, if you're borrowing a shared database, do you trust the other retailers' data that they put on there? I think we've already seen there's been some sort of our store managers putting their ex-girlfriends on here, for whatever different reason. And for example, tough one.
Tricky one, isn't it? And then I think where there's still variance, but I think we can see where best practice would emerge is around the verifications. So even though many of the retailers and the vendors talk about having over 99% accuracy, I think we still need that human intervention just to really make sure that the person it's suggesting it is that person. So I think most retailers now are moving towards that human verification. Sometimes two people are required to do that verification, but not all are doing that.
Well, that assumes that the previous point, the database, that person is on the database, then you're comparing them to two people. And again, it depends on, you're going to chucking them out the store, or just simply just saying, welcome to the store. Do you mind if I just hang around here and help you do some shopping? I think there's different levels of accuracy, depending on what you want the consequence to be.
And that response is so varied as well, isn't it? So we're seeing a lot of retailers moving into the space of, we just then give them excellent customer service, hand them a basket, don't necessarily follow them around the store, but make it very known that this person has been noticed. Other stores are just doing it as a, heads up, there's somebody in the store, and particularly if it's flagged that they are potentially violent or aggressive, then you don't want your staff to approach them, but just having that forewarning that there's somebody potentially challenging in the space is, really useful, I think, to know then how to handle it. But we've also seen quite a few media incidents, particularly in the UK, where the response has been, we're just going to, eject that person from the store. And unfortunately, this has coincided with when they haven't had that human verification process. And so lo and behold, splashed all over the media, somebody being thrown out quite aggressively, and it was a false positive. Now that's going to be really damaging, I think, in this space. And there's ways around it. It doesn't have to be that way. So I think, again, we're beginning to see a bit of best practice emerge there.
Well, I think you've been really vocal about the need for sort of almost a code of practice, some sort of guidelines that retailers adopt, because, I do think that certainly the sort of privacy groups are going to latch onto any bad news fast. And perhaps not latch onto the good news that, staff are feeling safer, staff are safer. There are fewer incidents of violence, and shrink is down. That's probably not a story that Big Brother Watch will cover. So that code of practice, what do you have in mind for that? How do you think that could happen?
Yeah, the industry is absolutely crying out for this code of practice. And I think that goes for vendors as well, as the retailers that are looking to deploy it. And interesting, you mentioned Big Brother Watch, the Civil Liberties campaign group here in the UK, and I interviewed them on my podcast. And they're also very supportive of the idea of a code of practice. And so what that would do, it would outline the minimum standards that a vendor must reach in terms of having, tested their product and being able to answer all the questions that a retailer might have around accuracy, data storage, who's the data controller, etc. But then it will also set a number of principles for retailers to look at. And it would build in some of those things around being, privacy safe, having a standard around what the approach is, that human touch as well, which I think is so important. And it will just give confidence, I think, for retailers and customers that this is being used sensibly and there's a good use case for it. There's a real sensible way that this is going to be about identifying known offenders and really protecting employees and customers, from any potential violence, abuse or theft. It just gives everybody that real safe space. But I think that confidence that is being deployed sensibly is really key.
Yeah, and as you say, this against prolific offenders, this is the best loss prevention person you can have at a store, right? I mean, they're not, on their phones, they're not distracted, they're not sick on holiday. It is the best loss prevention tool that you can have. But these detail points are absolutely critical, and this code of practice that would be really helpful that you talk to. Look, this is fantastic. This is not over, of course. So we'll be doing another podcast on this in 6 months' time, and hopefully there's some more learnings to come around from around the world. This is a big topic for many retailers, and hopefully one of these days, some of the retailers will actually be able to share some of the results in the public. But certainly for now, I suppose this is a technology that's huge potential. We've got to win over the board, the court of public opinion. And that's why I think, for me, one of the bigger highlights from our recent discussions has been it's taking retailers 2 to 3 years from, I think we need to do something on facial recognition to actually starting a deployment in the store, because there's just so many hoops, so many procedures, so many things to think through with so many different people internally and also externally. That means you need that long run-in. But more progress, I'm sure, will be reported when we next discuss it. Until then, thank you very much indeed.
Brilliant. Thank you, Colin.
Well, that's all we have time for this week. Thank you for joining us, and thanks to all the ECR retail loss community for the sharing of their knowledge, their research and latest learnings that ensure that we become truly a global platform for learning. My name is Colin Peacock. This is the Sell More and Lose Less podcast, and if you liked it, please subscribe so you automatically get all future episodes. And also, if you think your colleagues and friends might also like it, please ask them to follow ECR Retail Loss on LinkedIn and tune in to our next podcasts. If you didn't like it, then let us know and we'll try and fix it. Either way, see you next time. Thank you again.